It's Saturday night and you're with the Saturday Five. I'm Dr. Renee Hundekamp and I can promise you that you are in for yet another very lively hour. It's been pretty hot so far. Let's crack on with tonight's main event though. President Trump confirms that the USA have carried out large-scale strikes on Venezuela.
We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. So we don't want to be involved with having somebody else get in and we have the same situation that we had for the last long period of years. So we are going to run the country.
Well, to discuss this further, I'm really pleased to welcome Nile Gardiner, the foreign policy analyst and former aide to Lady Thatcher. Niall, thank you for joining us tonight. There is so much evolving from what we've seen tonight with this incredible press conference that Trump has held. It seems to me that there's probably much more below the surface that we've yet to find out about why he has done this and how he has done it. What's your initial take?
Well, thanks very much for having me on the show from Washington, D.C. I think, firstly, of course, this was a stunningly successful military operation, actually on a far bigger scale than the Zero Dark 30 raid against Osama bin Laden. So this was a much bigger military exercise. It involved actually about 150 US aircraft operating from 20 bases. And so this was a display of American exceptionalism on the world stage, a highly successful precision operation. I think that no one, is questioning American leadership on the world stage right now and its ability to take out the enemies of the United States. And Maduro, of course, a very nasty narco-terrorist dictator, has found out to his cost that, defying, President Trump, even mocking President Trump actually comes at a great cost. And so I do think this was actually a great day for the United States and also for Venezuela as well. But of course, the next question, will be how exactly the U.S. administration of Venezuela will work. And the president talked a bit about, the next steps. But we'll have to see exactly, what happens in terms of how this U.S. administration will actually work on the ground in Venezuela. But let me say this, the people of Venezuela are vastly better off without Maduro in power, a very evil tyrant, of course, responsible for the deaths of large numbers of Americans through the vast drug supply that has flown into the U.S. over previous years from Venezuela. So he will get his just desserts in a court in New York shortly.
No, I couldn't agree more on that final point. But within that answer, you also a couple of times referred to how this would be perceived on the world stage. You said that this would be a show of American exceptionalism. At the same time, we've heard some people on the panel tonight say that this could actually be a way for rogue states or for powers like Russia or China to legitimise their efforts to, for example, take Taiwan or to continue in Ukraine. How do you think this changes the way that China and Russia think about their regional interests, if at all?
Well, that's a very good question. And I think that the downfall of Maduro, of course, is a big blow to Beijing and to Moscow. After all, the Venezuelan dictator was really a client of the Russians and the Chinese. And so this is a big blow, actually, to both Putin and Xi Jinping, and a humiliation, actually, for the Russians and the Chinese. Also a blow, of course, to Cuba, to Iran, and some other very nasty dictatorships on the international stage. So I would say, actually, this primarily, of course, this advances American power on the world stage. This very successful operation. No other nation in the world could carry out this kind of operation. The Chinese, the Russians, for example, simply could not do this. And it's a demonstration of the fact that, the United States is the, undisputed leader of the world at this time. No one can challenge American global power. So I would argue, actually, that it weakens the position of Russia and China. And it sends a clear message to other client states of Moscow and Beijing that they could be next, actually. And the president did mention specifically Colombia and also Cuba. as possible potential next targets for the United States.
Well, Niall, I think that's a really interesting comment, not least because this will affect Cuba massively because they get their oil from Venezuela. So I think the Cubans are probably shaking in their seats tonight. But the other question I would have, because you've been an aide to Margaret Thatcher, could you ever have envisaged, Reagan doing this without speaking to Thatcher first?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And I think that, of course, President Reagan consulted with Lady Thatcher on many, many occasions. It's a different kind of special relationship right now because you have Keir Starmer in Downing Street, who's an absolute disaster as Prime Minister. And I don't think that the United States would actually trust Keir Starmer if he was consulted in advance, with regard to US war plans. You simply can't trust Keir Starmer. I mean, he's been a terrible prime minister, and I think that the reality is that Donald Trump would not be consulting with Keir Starmer for any kind of military operation because the trust isn't there, and Keir Starmer, I think, is viewed widely in Washington as a very, very weak and disastrous British prime minister, and so he's very unpopular here in the United States. So it's a totally different dynamic, but it's a great point that you make.
Can I just ask a very quick question? Where do you think this leads now? Because, I mean, including in Lady Thatcher's time, American adventurism in South America is not new, but often has failed. You look at the examples from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, mostly these are countries where American-funded coups or destabilization has led to a deterioration in that country's fortunes. What do you think are the key factors at play now as America enters this new period of a relationship with Venezuela, if you can call it that at all?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I would say actually the US military today is even more powerful and more effective than it was during the Cold War years. And we saw that with the operation today in Venezuela, which was an incredible high-risk operation, but hugely successful. I think that, with regard to Donald Trump, I mean, he's not, of course, interested in sort of long-term nation building in Latin America, but he does want to ensure, of course, that there is stability in Venezuela, and that Venezuela no longer operates as a malevolent narco state threatening the lives of American citizens through a large inflow of drugs or illegal migrants. And so that's the immediate goal for the United States. I don't think the US has any intention of remaining long-term in Venezuela, but they want to ensure that you do see stability in Venezuela, and that you also see a pro-Western, democracy in place in Caracas, as opposed to the anti-Western dictatorship, illegitimate dictatorship, of course, they saw under Nicolas Maduro.
Do you think this is a message to China as well, Niall?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, there was a Chinese high-level delegation in Caracas just a couple of days ago with Xi Jinping's special envoy to Venezuela. And the US still struck Venezuela just a day later. And so this does send a message to China that, China fancies itself, of course, as some sort of big power in Latin America. The reality is there's only one big international force in Latin America right now. That's the United States. And as much as the Chinese want to be a big player, and as much as the Russians want to be a big player in the Western Hemisphere, they're not going to succeed. And that's a clear message, of course, that Donald Trump is sending to Beijing and also to Moscow as well. And in fact, he had some very harsh words of Vladimir Putin at Mar-a-Lago in his press conference today.
Now, we've talked about how this will be received globally, but we haven't talked about the domestic reception yet within the United States. Some people will see this, to Kai's term, as more adventurism in South America, which is not America first, whereas Trump is trying to frame this for a variety of reasons as being within America's interests. Do you think he will be able to win the comms campaign, for want of a better term, with his base and with the American public more generally?
Yeah, that's a really important point you make there, and I do think that this latest move by the White House is overall going to be very popular among the American people. Firstly, of course, because this was a very successful military operation. There was no loss of US life at all, no casualties on the US side. I think, secondly, most Americans understand that the president took this action in order to protect the American people. Large numbers of Americans have died as a result of the inflow of drugs coming from Venezuela, Colombia, and other countries in Latin America. And so there's been a huge cost of American life as a result of the inflow of illegal drugs from countries like Venezuela. And so I do think that immediately there's going to be a huge amount of sympathy from the American public for US action taken against a dictator who has American blood on his hands, actually. So I do think there'll be very strong public support, but inevitably you're going to find a lot of figures on the left, socialist Democrats, for example, who are condemning the president. They'll condemn the president no matter what he does. But at the end of the day, President Trump's actions here will save a large number of American lives, and that's a popular, I think, decision for a US president to take.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting, Niall. I'm sure we've got lots more to come over the next few days. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. That was really interesting.
My pleasure. Many thanks.